Well, here we are, finally at the last part of this 3-part extravaganza. I might have bitten off more than I could chew with this, but hey, I finally did it, at the cost of a few hairs and whatever remains of my sanity. For this final installment, we're diving deeper into the international, the vintage, the controversial, and even the illegally owned channels that once served communities, or existed solely to pirate content for thousands of viewers. I must admit, it was kinda hard researching a lot of the international obscure ones because a lot of the channels come from countries where even local sources barely have information on it, so bear with me as I try to piece them all together. Also sorry if my pronunciations are terrible, I really tried, like for real. Anyways guys, let's not waste any more time. My name is Luis and this is part 3 of the Defunct TV channel's Iceberg. This was a music video request channel based in Ireland and the UK and was owned by Channel 4, the same ones who also owned Kerrang! Despite the channel being an iconic piece over in Europe, it actually originated in Miami, Florida back in 1985. Launched as the Video Jukebox Network by Steve Peters, as the name suggests, this was a music network that ran like a jukebox. Viewers could request a song for about $2.50 each by calling in and punching in the 3-digit code that would be displayed at the bottom of the screen. While MTV stuck to a fixed schedule of music videos, viewers of the Jukebox Network could request their favorite songs without waiting for it to pop up, even allowing viewers to request music explicit in sex and violence. While giving viewers the opportunity to listen to their favorite song on TV sounds amazing, it also had its setbacks. For example, if a new popular music video came out, it often resulted in the same song being played over and over again, which I could imagine was annoying to some casual viewers. By 1990, Les Garland, co-founder of MTV and VH1, would be brought in to run the network. Under his leadership, he would change the name of the channel to simply The Box. Unfortunately, The Box never managed to last long in America, as in 1999, the channel was acquired by MTV Networks, where it was shut down in 2000 to expand the reach of MTV2, ending the Miami-based network after only 15 years. However, over in Europe, it was a different story. After discovering the channel in 1991, Vincent Montse and Liz Laskowski formed Video Jukebox Network International Limited to license the branding and format of the US counterpart, and in April of 1992, the box launched in the UK. Initially available on regional cable services before expanding nationwide, it kept the same request-driven model, with viewers calling a premium rate phone line to queue up music videos. The service quickly became a cult favorite, especially amongst younger viewers who enjoyed the feeling of controlling the channel. But in later years, the interactive request system was phased out in favor of curated playlists, as well as have a holiday-themed rebrand called Boxmas during the Christmas season, which also included holiday-themed music, because 9 times out of 10 people were going to request it anyways. But as you expect in the age of the internet, channels like The Box weren't sustainable in the streaming era. And so, on January 29, 2024, Channel 4 announced the closure of The Box, alongside other networks in the Box Plus network, including Magic, Kiss, 4Music, and Kerrang! The move was part of a broader 5-year fast-forward plan to prioritize online and digital content and become a digital-first public streaming service by 2030. Thus, shredding smaller linear channels like The Box was a necessary move to do. Frankly, I'm surprised this format lasted until 2024. MTV had largely given up on music by the late 2000s, so it's interesting to see it go for so long. At 11:59 on June 30th, 2024, The Box officially closed down after 32 years, with its final music video being Goodbye by the Spice Girls. It then played a promo thanking and bidding farewell to the viewers before displaying the message, "The service has now closed."
We most definitely upped our Viva. Isn't it time you upped yours?
The same channel that aired Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness and Jackass at the same time. Viva. Okay, let me add some context. Viva was launched in the UK in October of 2009 as a free-to-air channel and was a replacement for The Music Factory, a music channel that was also owned by Viacom that fell into its own channel decay when it started airing less and less music. Viva served as a sampler platter channel of Viacom-owned programming, airing a mix of music videos, reality shows, and animated shows from MTV, Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, and even Channel 5. At one point, the channel even aired Noggin programming in the morning, featuring Nick Jr. content from the 2000s between 6 and 9 AM. Although, this part of Viva was a holdover from its predecessor, TMF, which had a similar setup, but this preschool block didn't last long, and it would be gone by early 2010. From what I could gather, Viva sort of felt like the UK's version of Moondos, which was like a mashup of music and general entertainment aimed at younger viewers. But just like Moondos, Viva met the same fate. It ceased operations on January 31st, 2018, with its final broadcast being none other than Viva Forever by the Spice Girls, a poetic goodbye, intentional or not. After that, the channel's online presence vanished, and its slot was handed over to a rotating lineup of Viacom spin-off channels like MTV Love and MTV OMG. They stuck around for a couple more years before quietly fading into obscurity too. Kids and Teens TV was a 24/7 American Christian children's channel operated by the Dominion Foundation, a nonprofit founded by Robert W. Johnson, creator of Sky Angel. The channel's mission was to provide Christ-centered, family-friendly programming aimed at uplifting and inspiring youth through the gospel of Jesus Christ. The programming was split through age groups through the day. From 7 AM to 9 PM, KTV aired shows for children's and preteens, including animated series, live-action dramas, cooking shows, game shows, and science programs. Then, from 9 PM to 7 AM, the Teen Zone targeted viewers from 12 AM and up, featuring Christian music videos, talk shows, youth ministry services, sitcoms, action dramas, and live concerts or special events. KTV sought to harness the power of television on a positive influence on children, with the hope of changing a generation through faith-based content. If that sounds like the previously mentioned Smile of a Child channel to you, well, yeah, they're practically the same. So much so that in October 2015, the Trinity Broadcasting Network's Smile of a Child service began simulcasting on KTV from 7 AM to 7 PM, a partnership that lasted until June of 2017. Things will go normal until January of 2019 when Kids and Teens TV, along with its sister channels Angel 1 and Angel 2, abruptly shut down after Sky Angel ceased operations without any announcement after only 20 years. Here we have a short-lived attempt at a video game network not named G4, Loading. This Brazilian station was envisioned as a hub blending Asian culture, esports, and gaming. And to make things even more interesting, it was like a second cousin to the original, now defunct MTV Brazil, as it took over the UHF channel 32, which had previously aired Ideal TV. Now, you'd think launching an esports-based TV network in the middle of 2020, the year of a global pandemic, would be a terrible idea, but CEO Diego Garcia was optimistic, pitching Loading as a free entertainment solution for a portion of the Brazilian population that didn't have access to streaming platforms. He emphasized, quote, "The financial condition doesn't matter. Loading will exist for everyone, without anyone having to pay for it. Free content for everyone," end quote. Let's just see how long they stuck by that. Just 4 days after launch, the channel fired its entire esports team. Why? Because management didn't reportedly like how the show was doing, well, actual journalism. They wanted the channel to be a happy place with no controversial topics, meaning no coverage of discrimination, sexism, or criticism of major gaming brands. The journalists attempted to protest, but the network responded by firing them all, and yeah, that controversy pretty much destroyed any momentum Loading had. Just 5 months after launch, Loading would cease all live programming and original content production. After Kalunga, the network's primary sponsor pulled out, leaving the channel financially unviable. The channel technically stayed on air, but only aired reruns and third-party content, mostly from its early partnership with Crunchyroll. This included anime like Saint Seiya, The Lost Canvas, The God of High School, Tower of God, Goblin Slayer, 91 Days, and Given. Loading's rerun blog also featured geek-friendly content like K-pop music segments and Western animated shows like Transformers, Cyberverse, Extreme Ghostbusters, and the 2000s version of Max Steel. Finally, on November 28, 2021, Loading officially ceased operations, and ironically, it was replaced by Ideal TV. Yup, the same channel that it had originally replaced, so yeah. This video is brought to you by Aura. Guys, with the internet getting bigger and bigger, it's more important than ever to stay protected online. That's why I really appreciate Aura for sponsoring these videos. Aura is an all-in-one online security app that gives you identity theft protection and credit monitoring right out of the box. So, if someone tries to open a credit card or a loan in your name, you'll get notified immediately. Aura also scans your social security number, emails, bank accounts, and even home deed records against billions of data points. So, if anything suspicious shows up, whether it's shady data brokers or even the dark web, Aura sends you an alert right away. Basically, it's like having 24/7 monitoring of your identity. But wait, there's more. Aura isn't also just about identity protection. It includes a full antivirus for your phone and computer, as well as a VPN to encrypt your web traffic and block sketchy sites. So, if you're ready to take your online security seriously, head to aura.com/AmusingLuis to start your free trial and see what Aura can do for you. Big thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to the iceberg. In 1950, Brazil launched its first ever TV network, Rede Tupi. This was the brainchild of Assis Chateaubriand, a lawyer turned journalist who founded Diarios Asociados, one of the largest media empires in Latin America at the time. With a huge stake in newspapers, magazines, and radio, Chateaubriand became interested in television in July of 1944, following a visit to RCA Records in New York. They showed him some of their new shiny cameras, and despite RCA advising that Brazil may not be ready for TV, and that they should probably focus on radio, Chateaubriand quickly started setting up stations in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. He named the network, like some of his other stations, after the indigenous Tupiniquim tribe in Brazil. However, he had to wait for World War II to finish to order any equipment. But by September 18, 1950, Rede Tupi was ready to launch under the slogan, "The first TV station of Brazil, the first of Latin America." The debut broadcast aired at 5 p.m. on Channel 3, opening with a ceremony and the variety show TV in the Hut. The next day, Woody Woodpecker, or Pica-Pau as he's known in Portuguese, became the first cartoon show in Brazilian TV, followed by Andy Panda, which probably explains why Woody Woodpecker is so popular in South America and, well, not as much here. From there, Tupi introduced many firsts to Brazilian TV, including the first telenovela, Su Vida Me Pertence, or Your Life Belongs to Me, TV The Vanguard, a theater show that brought avant-garde plays to TV, women's talk shows, and the daily news covering sports, local, national, and international events. It even had a talent show known as Clube de Artistas, which became the network's longest running show from 1952 to 1980. Throughout the 1950s, Rede Tupi dominated Brazilian TV, but in the early 1960s, TV Record overtook it with its serialized dramas and popular music festival coverage. After Chateaubriand's death in 1968, the network fell into infighting, poor management, and mounting debt. Despite continuing to produce telenovelas, the 1970s brought a deeper crisis. Actors and staff were not being paid, which led to strikes erupting, and the network was seeing its lowest ratings in the channel's history. To make matters worse, a fire in 1978 destroyed one of Tupi's facilities, deepening its crisis, and by May of 1980, the situation had collapsed. Nearly 2/3 of Sao Paulo's 1,000 employees walked out after discovering the company was issuing them bad checks to cover its debt. 2 months later, the station went dark. The remaining staff in Rio tried to keep Tupi alive for a while, but on July 18, 1980, Brazil's military government ordered its closure. In its final moments, Rede Tupi was airing footage for the Mass for John Paul II, during which it switched to actor Chivio Cordeiro and the employees of the station pleading with the president to save the station. But at 12:33 p.m., the Tupi logo, colored in Brazil's national green, yellow, and blue, appeared for the last time before transmitters were sealed.
Bem simples.
Bem simples. Aqui, você é quem faz.
Seja bem-vindo ao Bem Simples. Você é quem faz.
Life could be simpler, and apparently short-lived. Bem Simples was a Brazilian cable TV channel launched in 2011 as the local version of the Argentinian lifestyle network of the same name. It was owned by Fox International Channels Latin America and served as a spin-off of Fox Life, focusing entirely on practical, everyday living content. Think DIY, cooking, crafts, home improvement, parenting, wellness, and personal growth. The channel actually started in Argentina back in 2009, originally as a programming block on Fox Life. It eventually gained enough traction to become its own 24-hour network and expanded into other countries such as Argentina and Portugal. Bem Simples also had a very specific niche. It was hyper-targeted towards a female audience with lots of short, simple how-to shows featuring local hosts, most of which were filmed on a shoestring budget. That said, that's all there really is to say about this channel. It was pretty obscure, especially if you weren't from Brazil or into that kind of content. By 2013, the channel was already losing steam. Much of its programming was quietly folded back into Fox Life, and by June 1st, 2014, Bem Simples officially ceased operations in Brazil, with no farewell or dramatic sign-off, just a quick merge back into the revamped Fox lineup across Latin America. And that was that. Simple to the end.
CBS Telenoticias. Información del mundo en 30 minutos.
Okay, this is my second time recording this because I thought Telenoticias said telenovelas, but I was wrong. CBS Telenoticias began life in 1994 as simply Telenoticias, a 24-hour Spanish-language news channel created through a joint venture between Antena 3 Internacional, Reuters, Grupo Medcom, and Telemundo, with Reuters and Telemundo holding a majority stake of the network at 42% each. Headquartered in Florida, the channel broadcast in both Spanish and Portuguese, targeting audiences across Latin America, the US, and Spain. It offered round-the-clock news, weather, business updates, talk shows, and special reports, focusing on Latin America affairs, but also covering international stories from a regional perspective. By 1996, though, the original partners were ready to move on. On June 28, 1996, CBS, then owned by Westinghouse, acquired Telenoticias and rebranded it to CBS Telenoticias, marking CBS's return to cable television for the first time since its failed fine arts experiment, CBS Cable, in the early 80s. This time, the focus was Spanish-language news. CBS aimed to break into the growing Latin American market and partnered with Telemundo to produce nightly newscasts and special programming, but trouble came fast. In March of 1997, CNN en Español launched and immediately drew a significant portion of the Spanish-speaking news audience. CBS Telenoticias struggled, and by 1998, it and its sibling network CBS Eye on People lost $9 million in a single quarter. CBS decided to offload a 70% stake in the channel to Mexico's Grupo Medcom, while retaining a content-sharing role. By 1999, CBS opted to not renew its production deal with Telemundo. Side note, NBC would go on to purchase Telemundo in 2001, but that's a completely different story. In January of 2000, Telemundo reassured operational control of the channel and just 2 months later shut it down completely. In its place, Telemundo launched Telemundo Internacional, a cable network geared towards international audiences, featuring general entertainment and repackaged content from the Telemundo library. Unlike CBS Telenoticias, Telemundo Internacional actually stuck around and continues to operate to this very day. As the name suggests, Fox Movies was a global paid television network that primarily aired films from 20th Century Fox, along with other titles from major studios through various licensing agreements. The channel was available through multiple regions, including the Middle East and North Africa, Southeast Asia, and parts of Europe such as Portugal and the Balkans. It also featured regional variations and sister channels like Fox Movies Premium and Fox Action Movies, offering HD broadcasts and genre-specific programming. This gave the channel a premium feel that would make it into a go-to destination for blockbuster films on satellite platforms. Think of it like HBO in America. However, following the Walt Disney Company's 2019 acquisition of 21st Century Fox, many of Fox's international TV assets, including Fox Movies, began phasing out. Disney was shifted strategy towards consolidating content under the Star brand, which it had acquired and was now expanding globally. In Southeast Asia, Fox Movies and its sister channels were officially shut down on August 1st, 2021, marking the end for many longtime cable and satellite subscribers. Gradually, other regions followed suit. By 2024, Fox Movies had ceased operations worldwide, with many of its regional feeds either shutting down entirely or being rebranded as Star Movies or Star Films, part of Disney's ongoing effort to streamline its international television footprint under a unified brand. Nat Geo Kids Abu Dhabi was a free-to-air Arabic-language children's television channel launched on November 20, 2017 as a joint venture between the Abu Dhabi Media Company, National Geographic, and the Walt Disney Company. Aimed at kids ages 8 to 13, the channel sought to broaden young viewers' horizons in science, technology, nature, and exploration through fun and educational programming. The content was available in both Arabic and English, making it accessible to a wide regional audience. Despite its noble mission and the fact that it was free, the channel lasted just under 3 years. On January 1st, 2020, Nat Geo Kids Abu Dhabi quickly ceased operations. Its website posted a thank you message to viewers and redirected them to the channel's YouTube page, where select videos remain available. As for the channel's content, much of it was later absorbed into the EMEA feed of Disney Junior, effectively ending Nat Geo Kids' run on linear TV in the region. Just looking at the bumpers and idents from this channel, this just gives me Toonami vibes. The only thing that's missing is the anime and drum and bass. Megamax was a Central European paid TV channel owned by AMC Networks International Central Europe. Aimed at kids and teens ages 5 to 17, it launched on April 18, 2011 in Hungary. By October of 2014, it was broadcasting 24/7 in Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia, and by January of 2015, Romania joined the list. The channel featured a solid lineup of animated and teen series like Code Lyoko, Degrassi the Next Generation, and Blue Water High. So yeah, some pretty decent shows for its target audience. But despite the effort, Megamax struggled to gain a larger audience. Due to low ratings, the channel was shut down at the start of 2020 and was replaced by the European feed of Jim Jam, a preschool channel that's, well, the complete opposite of what Megamax was going for. So I'm sure what most of you know what FX is. It's that channel that's often compared to AMC and is known for some of the most talked about shows like Sons of Anarchy, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, American Horror Story, and most recently, The Bear. Shut the fuck up! But the reason why I picked this version of FX instead of the others is because Australia actually had two versions of the channel, both of which had different qualities from the American counterpart. The first incarnation launched all the way back in 1995 and had a very different format. Instead of prestige dramas or edgy originals, it mainly aired classic television from the 1950s to the 1970s, often branded as the golden years of television. Think of it as early Nick at Night, just pure retro TV nostalgia. But going into the 2000s, FX would go into a completely new direction, pivoting towards women's focused content and marketing itself as Australia's first TV channel for women. Instead of the golden age shows, you now had shows like The View and Donnie and Marie, along with other lifestyle and talk content. By 2003, the channel has shifted away from the FX name, and by November, it was rebranded to only the letter W. Super clever name, by the way. W retains some of FX lifestyle content while expanding into drama, although the channel name stuck around for only a little bit until it was rebranded again in 2012 as Soho, a premium drama channel that also aired shows like Wentworth and Game of Thrones. However, Soho didn't last long either, and it was shut down in 2016 when Foxtel organized its drama programming across other channels. But FX wasn't done yet. Back in 2011, Fox International Channels announced that FX would return to Australia, and by 2012 it had relaunched. This time it was much closer to the American version of the channel, focusing on bold, high-quality dramas. Interestingly though, FX Australia aired shows that you wouldn't normally associate with the US version of the channel, like AMC's The Walking Dead and Hell on Wheels. Thanks to local licensing deals, FX Australia became known as a hub for cinematic, high-profile dramas, even if they originally came from rival networks. But by the mid-2010s, the TV landscape had dramatically changed. Thanks to streaming services like Netflix, Stan, and later Binge dominating the Australian market, traditional cable channels were rapidly losing relevance. And by February 2018, Foxtel confirmed that FX Australia would shut down, with much of its remaining programming being absorbed into other Foxtel channels like Fox Showcase. Zaz was a Mexican subscription television channel aimed at children and teenagers. Owned by MVS Communications and based in Mexico City, it launched in 1991 as the first dedicated kids TV network in Mexico and the third overall in Latin America. At launch, the channel aired a mix of animated series, live-action shows, and family movies from the likes of Fox Kids, Nickelodeon, Cinar, Nirvana, Deke Entertainment, Warner Brothers, and other small distributors. In 1996, Zaz expanded to the rest of Latin America after joining DirecTV, but as more networks from the likes of Nickelodeon and Fox Kids launched their own dedicated channels, they began pulling their own shows back. In 2003, Zaz rebranded as Zaz Movie Park, shifting focus to family movies with a few series sprinkled in. However, most of the films that aired were older titles, so the channel basically turned into a retro movie station. It wasn't until 2008 that Zaz Movie Park reverted back to Zaz, but instead of reverting to its non-violent roots, the channel pivoted to a tween and teen audience, mixing telenovelas like Rebelde Way and anime such as Kiba, Ice Shield 21, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, Robots, and Ryukendo. And while this looked like a strong lineup, it wasn't enough to keep the network alive. By 2012, many of Zaz's top-rated shows and anime programming were pulled, and with them went much of its audience. on July 31st, 2012, after a final airing of Ryukendo, Zaz would play the music video from Amy Winehouse's Tears Dry on Their Own until midnight, when the feed switched to the MVS television logo, marking the end of Zaz. Launched in New Zealand on June 29, 1997 as TV4, its programming was geared towards viewers in the 15 to 39 age demographic. Strangely, it didn't feature many New Zealand shows, but rather showcased many imported American programs. These shows were mainly from the Viacom catalog and included shows like South Park, Beverly Hills 90210, and Beavis and Butthead. Along the way, the channel started repeating older shows from the 1980s and 90s. And while this sounds like a solid channel lineup, after only 6 years, on October 3rd, 2003, 4 was replaced by a music channel, C4. Not the drink, or the bomb. There's not much I could say about C4 other than it was just another music channel, similar to something like Kerrang, as it too played rock and alternative music. But that wasn't the end of 4. After being off the air for 8 years, it was announced that 4 would be relaunched as a different channel on February 6, 2011, but instead of TV4, it was just named 4 and spelled in all caps. The network featured a slightly modified programming list. Children's shows were now added during the day, with popular examples like Sticky TV and Sesame Street winning over the younger demographic. It then shifted in the evening to appeal to the 18 to 49 age demographic, with a blend of everything from comedy, drama, and even reality TV. Towards 2016, 4 saw new episodes of American shows like The Simpsons, Family Guy, Glee, and How I Met Your Mother air within a week of their original US broadcast. This move drew in many viewers because other New Zealand channels waited longer before airing new episodes. But while it seemed like 4 was doing great, it eventually closed again on July 2nd, 2016, following a strategic business decision by its owner, MediaWorks. The network was replaced with Bravo, a joint venture between MediaWorks and NBC Universal. The idea behind Bravo was to capitalize on the growing popularity of reality TV shows, aiming to attract a coveted advertiser audience.
The weather plays a significant role in our lives every day. Now, with Dish Network and the Weathercast, you get the tools and information you need to get the weather how you want it, when you want it.
And the award for the shortest-lived TV channel goes to The Weathercast. In May of 2010, Dish Network announced that it would be removing the Weather Channel from its lineup, citing concerns about the network airing movies, something Dish claimed detracted from its core mission of providing weather coverage. For a bit of backstory, in late 2009, the Weather Channel began experimenting with Friday night movies. For many longtime viewers, this was unpopular, as up until that point, the Weather Channel was primarily all news all the time. While non-news programming on the Weather Channel is common today, back in 2009, this was unheard of. The experiment was short-lived, with movies disappearing in early 2010, only to return in March under the branding Flick and a Forecast. To make matters worse, the Weather Channel reportedly demanded a 9% increase in its carriage fees, from 11 cents per subscriber to 12 cents, amounting to roughly $140,000 per month for all Dish customers. For Dish, they weren't happy. In fact, they retaliated in the most extreme way possible by launching a brand new weather network. On May 20th, 2010, Dish Network would launch the Weathercast, a whole new 24-hour weather channel. Under press release, they didn't mention about the rising fee increases, but instead flexed on the fact that the channel has 100% weather-focused programming, with no movies or non-weather segments. Based on the remaining footage I could find, the channel looked pretty cheap for the most part, and if I were to choose the Weather Channel or the Weathercast, I'd probably choose the Weather Channel. Clearly, this protest against the Weather Channel didn't work, and eventually the two parties reached a multi-year agreement for continued distribution of the Weather Channel on Dish Network's programming platform. And after just 4 days, on May 24th, 2010, the Weathercast would quietly shut down without a send-off, making it the shortest-lived channel, even beating that of the cable music channel. I should also mention that during this 4-day protest, the Weather Channel was never really taken off Dish, which begs the question on why this was even made in the first place.
To load them in the truck and go.
I lost my auto body shop, the last money I had.
You can't replace people. Absolutely, we're happy to be alive.
I'm surprised I never covered this channel in my news installment of Discontinued Nostalgia, because this one's actually a fascinating case of defunct media. Al Jazeera America was a short-lived US news channel owned by the Qatari-based Al Jazeera Media Network, a global powerhouse broadcasting in 150 countries to nearly 500 million viewers worldwide. While Al Jazeera thrives overseas with its award-winning journalism, it couldn't break into the American news market. To see why, we need to rewind to the beginning. Al Jazeera was founded on November 1st, 1996 in the wake of BBC Arabic television's abrupt shutdown, which was pulled off the air due to the network's criticism of the Saudi government. When the plug was pulled, many of the BBC Arabic journalists who had been let go were recruited to help launch Al Jazeera Arabic. In 1998, Al Jazeera Arabic drew regional attention during Operation Desert Fox, offering rare on-the-ground reporting of the event, something that most Western outlets were absent from. But that regional attention transformed into national attention when, following the 9/11 attacks, Al Jazeera would be the first to gain exclusive access to Osama bin Laden's video and audio recordings, featuring bin Laden himself and leaders of Al-Qaeda. The footage was rebroadcasted worldwide, and for many in the West, it was the first time many saw the name Al Jazeera on a TV screen. At first, Western journalists and critics welcomed this new perspective. Some saw Al Jazeera as a platform to connect a global public sphere that crossed national borders. Books and articles even hailed it as revolutionary for Western public discourse. But on close examination, the US news media's embrace wasn't as strong as it appeared. While CNN had an exclusive content deal with Al Jazeera during the war in Afghanistan, other major networks largely ignored the Qatari station's footage, particularly anything depicting civilian casualties. And, well, guys, part of this reason is politics. Why are you surprised? As you expect, this gave the Bush administration a bad look.
That was a problem before.
And it would call out Al Jazeera for fabricating images of Muslim casualties. Even when Western outlets did air their own footage, they often warned viewers that this was the Arab perspective. Frustrated by the criticism from Western outlets, Al Jazeera would launch AlJazeeraEnglish.net in 2003 to reach Americans directly online instead. Although, due to the internet still being relatively new to a lot of people, it simply lacked the online influence and was not as successful as it hoped to be. While the website remained, Al Jazeera would launch Al Jazeera English in 2006, a 24-hour TV news channel broadcasting from Doha, London, Washington, D.C., and Kuala Lumpur. They hired familiar Western faces like David Frost, Riz Khan, and Dave Marash, and currently competes with CNN International and BBC World News by focusing on underreported regions. Still, despite reaching 130 million homes by 2009, Al Jazeera English still had a small reach in America, being available in just a few spots including Toledo, Ohio, and Burlington, Vermont. So instead of waiting to expand, they decided to buy their way into the American market. On January 3, 2013, Al Jazeera Media Network announced that it had purchased Current TV, a cable channel co-founded by Al Gore and Joe Hyatt, for around $500 million. And rather than rebranding the channel to Al Jazeera English, they decided to launch an entirely new US-focused channel, Al Jazeera America, on August 20th, 2013. The new channel would be launched from New York City with 12 US bureaus, 800 staff, and the largest news gathering footprint of any news network. And from there, they were hoping that they could compete with CNN, Fox, or MSNBC. Despite having the resources and even being recognized by others for its groundbreaking reporting, trying to establish a foundation of viewership was deemed impossible for Al Jazeera America. Americans just didn't watch. Primetime viewership during the first year averaged around 17,000 people. For comparison, CNN pulled 453,000 viewers, and Fox News had around 1.87 million. Even during big stories like Ferguson, ISIS, and Gaza, Al Jazeera America only got about 25,000 viewers. On top of that, the network ran with very limited commercial breaks, about 6 minutes per hour rather than the average 15. While it made for a better viewing experience, it also meant far less ad revenue to offset the huge operating costs. Another major issue came from the name itself. While Al Jazeera just means the peninsula in Arabic, the name itself led to some people assuming that it was anti-American or extremist, simply because it sounded foreign. In the end, Al Jazeera America faced an uphill battle, and after less than 3 years, on April 12, 2016, the channel signed off for good for the last time.
Çocuk kanalı Kids, Türkiye'nin tek anime kanalı Animes, Türksat 2 ağ uydu, D-Smart ve Teledunya'da yayında.
Launched on February 3, 2012, Kids TV was a Turkish television channel with 2 distinct programming blocks. From 4:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m., it aired preschool and children's programming such as Pocoyo, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Muddle Earth, and other family-friendly shows. Essentially the kind of lineup you'd expect from an early childhood network. After 9:30, the channel transformed into Animes, Turkey's only dedicated manga anime block, featuring popular titles like Death Note, Bleach, Naruto, and Fullmetal Alchemist. The result was a channel that catered to children by day and anime fans by night. Kids TV and Animes would shut down on February 1st, 2019 after 7 years of broadcasting. While no official reason was given, competition from global giants like Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Disney Channel, each with their own dedicated Turkish feeds, likely made it difficult for the channel to survive long term.
A continuación, Miss 15. Solo por Canal 19.
Okay, so this is like a really bizarre channel. I mean, this just looks like a bootleg channel if I'm being honest. Everything from the logo to the presentation just looked cheap, and you'll see what I mean. Canal 19 was an El Salvadorian over-the-air TV network launched on November 16, 1995. The channel began as a women's interest channel and had the slogan El Canal de la Mujer, or the Women's Channel. This initial phase lasted about 4 years until Canal 19 hit it big. In late 1998, Grupo Megavisión, the company behind Canal 19, struck a deal with MTV networks to license their content, and so, beginning January 20th, 1999, Canal 19 was relaunched as a youth-focused channel. By day, it broadcasted Nickelodeon content, and by night, it carried MTV Latin America programming. But by the 2000s, it began airing simply Nickelodeon content. It also had shows that weren't on the regular American channel like Miss 15 and Lizzie McGuire. The channel would be familiar to many in the El Salvador area as it introduced a generation to shows like iCarly, SpongeBob SquarePants, Hey Arnold, and Avatar. But unfortunately, good things come to an end. On May 31st, 2012 at 11 p.m., Canal 19 ceased its Nickelodeon MTV programming after 14 years. The reason for this change was that Viacom, the distributor affiliated with Nickelodeon, made the decision to limit the channel's availability to pay TV only. This move was influenced by the pressure from cable companies that wanted to restrict access to certain channels exclusively for their subscribers. If that sounds familiar, it's basically the same fate that MTV Brazil had. But before they signed off, Canal 19 gave their viewers the most cheap-looking farewell send-off before shutting off. And guys, when I say cheap-looking, I mean, I thought this was completely fake, like Cubo hoax fake, but once you get to see the recordings of everyone pointing at their screens, you're just standing there like, holy crap, it's real. After its final airing of House of Anubis, Canal 19 cut away to a white background with text reading, "For 14 years, Canal 19 through the Nickelodeon signal in El Salvador brought joy to many children and teenagers from all corners of our country. And now the time has come to say goodbye to our children's programming. For this reason, we thank you all for always tuning in. Canal 19 thanks you for allowing us into your home these 14 years. Now the time has come to say goodbye." The message was accompanied by the song Worldwide by Big Time Rush, along with a slideshow countdown leading to the official closure of the channel. Honestly, it just takes me out of it because, I mean, just look at this. I could have done a better job. I could have added a gradient or a smoother looking transition to actually make this more heartfelt. For 14 years, Canal 19 through the Nickelodeon signal in El Salvador brought joy to many children and teenagers from all corners of our country. And now the time has come to say goodbye to our children's programming. For this reason, we thank you all for always tuning in. Canal 19 thanks you for allowing us into your home these 14 years. And now the time has come to say goodbye. You see, it was a lot better than what that was. Immediately after the shutdown, Grupo Megavisión began overhauling Channel 19's format, announcing that it would relaunch as an all-news operation by mid-July. For the time being, Canal 19 briefly rebroadcast programming from its sister channel, Canal 21. By early August 2012, the rebranding was complete and the channel was now called Mega Noticias Canal 19, featuring round-the-clock news, business, sports, and option shows. So yeah, kinda sad to see the channel get all the fun sapped away from it. Okay, remember when I said Canal 19 looked bootleg and even had an actual agreement with Viacom? Well, I feel like this one got cease and desist fast because what the fuck is this? In the mid-1990s, Premier, a major Argentinian cable company which was later absorbed into Liberty Global and is now AMC Networks International Latin America, launched a children's cable network in Argentina simply called Nick. And despite the name Nick, this had no affiliation with Nickelodeon or its parent company. Yet, somehow, it still managed to air some Nickelodeon series like Ren and Stimpy and Doug. And on top of that, it broadcast a mix of Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera cartoons. It's a pretty strange channel, and yeah, it might not sound real at first, but once you dig around and find the few remaining bumpers and magazine listings, it pretty much confirms its existence. However, just a year later, the channel was shut down, and in its place came Magic Kids, another topic I mentioned earlier. So yeah, perhaps they must have heard that Nickelodeon was a thing and immediately scrapped it for Magic Kids. Just my theory. Alright everyone, before we go any deeper into this iceberg, I'm going to take a step back and let a special guest take over for a bit. If you're into the lost media scene, then chances are you probably know who they are. I'm also guessing you've been looking at the title of this video for a bit, so I'll waste no time. Give it up for L Supersonic Q. Take it away.
So these next few entries are bundled together because there's really no point in splitting them up. They tell one collective story. And I'm sure Cartoon Network needs no introduction. But while the brand name still holds iconic status globally, from the checkerboard logo to Adventure Time, Ben 10, and Powerpuff Girls, the past decade has not been kind to Cartoon Network's international branches. A slow, rolling wave of reconstructing has resulted in many regional CN channels either shutting down, being absorbed into broader pan-regional feeds, or losing much of their original identity. What's left behind is a much more centralized, one-size-fits-all Cartoon Network experience. Efficient, sure, but at the cost of local flavor, custom blocks, and regional creativity. Let's rewind a bit. Some of Cartoon Network's earliest global channels, like CN France, Germany, and Portugal, all launched in September 1993, just a few months after the US debut. These were part of Turner Broadcasting's major 1990s expansion, pushing CN into homes across Europe with a mix of dubbed classics, European-friendly time blocks, and local branding elements. Over time, more markets followed: Spain, Italy, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, and Latin America, each getting their own tailored feed. These channels often featured regional hosts, custom bumpers, local events, and even unique programming blocks. For example, CN Latin America had its own version of Cartoon Fridays, and CN India famously experimented with Bollywood-style local animation.
Hey. Tommy, that's your sister!
The idea was simple: same brand, different voice, depending on where you lived. But by the late 2010s, that strategy started to shift. Warner Media, which is now Warner Bros. Discovery, began consolidating operations to cut costs, reduce duplication, and bring all international feeds in line with a single modern brand identity. That meant many regional CN channels, especially ones with small viewerships or low ad revenue, were either rebranded, shut down, or absorbed into centralized pan-regional feeds. For example, Cartoon Network Germany closed on September 24, 2024, and its content was folded into Cartoon Network Western Europe. Similarly to Germany, Cartoon Network in France, Portugal, the Netherlands, and the Nordic regions all ceased their local operations and merged into the Western European feed, while still offering different dubs for each region. As for the remaining feeds around the world, such as those in Latin America and Italy, the once vibrant branding of regionally produced segments and bumpers has now largely been replaced with near copies of the US version, simply dubbed and with minimal localization. It's only a matter of time before more of these channels consolidate further, or disappear altogether. Although Toonami is mostly known in the US as a programming block, outside of America, the brand has taken on a much larger global identity, often operating as a full-fledged TV channel. While there were Toonami blocks across Australia, Europe, and Latin America, the first actual Toonami channel launched in the UK, replacing the now CNX channel that was mentioned earlier. You know, the one that awkwardly tried to pivot into a live-action channel? Yeah, ew. But the real Toonami channel boom began after the brand's revival in 2012. That year saw the launch of Toonami Asia, a cable channel aimed at boys aged 8 to 15. It featured a mix of action-oriented animation, anime, and superhero content. And based on the lineup found on Wikipedia, yeah, I'm pretty jealous we didn't get this. Toonami Asia even had its own original lore. Instead of Tom, they had Nami, a brand new character whose backstory was crowdsourced from fan submissions. It was a pretty cool, localized twist on the classic Toonami formula. The success of Toonami Asia led to the launch of Toonami India in 2015 and Toonami France in 2016. Unfortunately, the Indian channel was shut down in 2018, replaced by the HD feed of Cartoon Network. As for Toonami France, it initially mirrored the Asian feed, focusing on action and anime, but it eventually carved out its own niche with the addition of AEW programming, including Dynamite, Rampage, and Battle of the Belts. That's right, anime and pro wrestling, together on one channel, and it actually worked. Over time, the French channel also began airing Adult Swim content, evolving from a kid-focused network to a more mature hybrid lineup. It was still recognizable as Toonami, but clearly headed a new direction. Then in 2023, Warner Bros. Discovery announced that Toonami France would rebrand as Warner TV Next, effective September 4th. This move was part of a broader rebranding initiative across Europe, to unify content under the Warner banner. While the channel retained much of its programming, anime, DC content, AEW, and Adult Swim, the Toonami name was officially retired. As of now, Toonami Africa remains the only standalone Toonami channel still operating. Elsewhere, the brand lives on in the form of programming blocks, like the late night block on Adult Swim in the US. So yeah, while the spirit of Toonami is still alive, the era of full-on Toonami channels seems to be fading. But hey, stay gold. Oh, and I guess while we're on the topic of international Toonami, I saw this one clip of Toonami supposedly in Pakistan, which I can't find any info on, but I thought I'd put a spotlight on that.
It's time for a break. We'll be back shortly.
Just like Cartoon Network and Toonami, Nickelodeon also has seen some of its international channels meet an early end, though for a variety of reasons. The first major closure was Nickelodeon Japan, which launched in November 1998. Despite running for over a decade, the channel shut down on September 30th, 2009, the same day as a global Nickelodeon rebrand due to low viewership. And to be fair, Japan already has an incredibly strong anime culture. I doubt kids there were dying to watch The Mighty Bee, you know? Still, Nick didn't completely disappear. In 2010, a nighttime Nick Time block launched on the Animax network, and some popular shows, especially SpongeBob SquarePants, moved to NHK Educational TV. In 2018, Nick Japan made a short-lived comeback as a streaming channel, but it was quietly discontinued again on January 31st, 2022. Across the sea, Nickelodeon South Korea faced a somewhat similar fate. Before launching a standalone channel, Nickelodeon already had a presence in Korea through content partnerships. That changed in 2005, when a dedicated Nickelodeon Korea channel launched. Over the years, it evolved. On Media sold a stake to C&M in 2008, and by 2010, it adopted Nick's updated orange logo. In 2011, Viacom partnered with SBS to create SBS Viacom, bringing Nick Korea under the same umbrella as MTV Korea. Programming focused on Korean dubbed versions of global Nick hits. Meanwhile, other networks like JEI-TV and Tooniverse also aired Nick shows. Tooniverse launched a Nickelodeon time block in August 2022, airing shows like Paw Patrol and The Fairly OddParents. Nickelodeon Korea officially shut down on June 30th, 2022, and was rebranded as Kids Mom, a family lifestyle channel. But that didn't last long. Kids Mom shut down less than a year later, replaced by SBS Golf 2. Around the same time, Paramount Plus launched on CJ E&M's TVing platform, allowing Korean audiences to stream Nick content on demand. The linear channel was gone, but Nick's presence survived digitally and in daily blocks. In Russia and the CIS, Nickelodeon had been broadcasting since November 15, 1998, and became the first kids network in the region to broadcast in HD by 2011. It adopted Nickelodeon's global refresh in 2010 and operated as a localized Russian language channel. But geopolitics cut its run short. On April 28, 2022, Paramount froze all operations in Russia in response to the war in Ukraine, and Nickelodeon Russia was taken off the air that day. Feeds in Belarus and other CIS countries lingered for a few more months, but by December 14, 2022, even those had been replaced with the pan-regional Nickelodeon CEE feed. Nick Russia had also faced local censorship challenges. For example, episodes of The Loud House that featured LGBTQ+ characters were often cut to comply with the country's anti-LGBT laws. Nickelodeon Pakistan, also known as ARY-NIC, had its own rocky path. It launched on November 23, 2006, under a licensing deal between Viacom and the ARY Digital Network. For most of its run, it aired a standard Nickelodeon lineup: SpongeBob, Dora, Henry Danger, usually in English or occasionally dubbed in Hindi. That became a problem. Pakistan's media authority suspended the channel's license in 2016 due to its reliance on Hindi language content instead of Urdu, showing how local regulations could make or break a channel. Then on October 28, 2024, Nickelodeon Pakistan abruptly went off the air. No clear reason was given, but industry insiders believe a mix of regulatory pressure and the shrinking economics of pay TV in Pakistan finally caught up with it. And finally, Nickelodeon New Zealand was perhaps the earliest casualty in this group. It launched on August 1, 2006 on Sky Channel 41 to serve Kiwi kids, largely mirroring the Australian Nick feed, with shows like iCarly, Avatar, and Dora. A daily Nick Jr. preschool block was included, and the NZ version even featured Maori language audio tracks, a rare nod to local culture in the Nick family. But in late 2010, Viacom shut down its New Zealand TV offices, and on November 30, 2010, Nickelodeon NZ was closed as part of a regional consolidation. The Australian Nickelodeon feed took over the following day. No controversy, just a quiet goodbye as part of a broader restructuring. Also, one last channel before I pass it off to Luis. While I was still recording this, another one of Nickelodeon's international networks had recently hit the grave, Nickelodeon Canada, which shut down at the start of September 2025. Launched in 2009, replacing Discovery Kids, the channel was a joint venture between Viacom and Chorus Entertainment. Although it came well after the Splat era had ended, Nickelodeon Canada still featured a mix of new and vintage Nickelodeon and Nick Jr. programming, alongside shows from YTV and Treehouse TV. Unfortunately, with cord cutting on the rise and kids' preferences shifting towards streaming, Nickelodeon Canada, along with Disney Channel, Disney Junior, Disney XD, and ABC Spark, were shut down under the financial pressures facing Chorus. Not only that, but Nelvana, one of Canada's most iconic animation studios, also halted production because of it. On top of that, Wildbrain, another major Canadian television producer, announced the closure of its channels, including Wildbrain TV, Family Junior, Telemagino, and most tragically, Family Channel, a childhood staple for generations of Canadian youth. With all these channels going the way of the VHS over in Canada, this feels like it's just a matter of time before the main US channels shut down. I can't imagine Cartoon Network staying around, especially now that it's tucked away in expensive cable packages. But only time will tell. And of course, if any searches arise from the lost content that comes from these channels, you know where to find it on my channel.
Jesus, just when you think these channels can't get any more bizarre, they do. While Americans had widespread cable TV by the 1980s, Romania was a different story. Under communist rule, broadcast television was restricted to just a few hours a day. But after the 1989 revolution and fall of communism, the country's media landscape opened up, sparking a boom in independent TV stations throughout the 1990s. These stations offered a mix of original programming and Western imports. But in 2000, one of them would emerge as the country's most controversial and influential channels, OTV. To the best of my knowledge, OTV was known for one show and one show only, Don D. Acunesco Direct. And if I'm being honest, this kinda looked like InfoWars before InfoWars. The channel was first launched in December of 2000. Founded by journalist Dan D. Acunesco from his studio apartment, he began broadcasting a long-form talk show, a tabloid-style program that often ran from morning until late at night. What really made OTV stand out was its wild lineup of guests, ranged from spiritual mediums and manale singers to even convicted criminals, basically your typical kick stream. But the chaos wasn't filled without consequences. In 2002, OTV was shut down by Romania's National Audiovisual Council, or the CNA. The decision was followed by an on-air racist and anti-Semitic remarks made by PRM politician Cornelio Vadim Tudor during an episode of Dan Dianesco Direct. The CNA found the content in violation of Romania's new anti-hate laws. A court upheld the decision and OTV was off the air for 2 years. Diaconescu protested, claiming political motives. He even alleged refusing to sell part of OTV to then Prime Minister Adrian Nastase, but the shutdown stood. It wouldn't be until 2004 that Diaconescu made a comeback by creating a new company under a different name and applied for a fresh broadcast license, which the CNA granted. And so, OTV was officially relaunched on April 1st, 2004, rebranded as an entertainment channel. But let's be real, the core format remained the same: marathon episodes of Dan D Direct. From 2004 onwards, the channel became infamous for its non-stop news stickers and flashy on-screen captions like incredible or sensational. And the content was just pure madness. It was nothing but doomsday predictions, secret experiments, hauntings, and serialized crime mysteries. OTV would also do much harm than good when they turned missing person cases into live soap operas. Most infamously, the disappearance of lawyer Elota Gânescu. The channel aired 239 consecutive episodes on the case, making it one of the most widely covered missing person stories in Romanian media history. The coverage was seen as highly controversial as OTV pushed wild theories, staged over-the-top reenactments, and employed unethical tactics, at one point even hacking into Elota's email and reading her private messages on air. After years of milking the story, her husband, Christian Shuaka, a police officer, was eventually arrested and convicted of her murder, even though no body was ever found. Following his run for office in 2010, Dan Diaconescu shifted OTV from a crime tabloid program to a full-blown political platform, using his show to expose alleged corruption and promote his own political party, the People's Party. By 2011, the channel fully embraced the party's agenda, pushing anti-establishment rhetoric, attacked judges corrupt, promising debt forgiveness for citizens, and rallied against austerity measures. Once protests over the government swept Romania in early 2012, OTV began praising itself as an emergency service and claiming support for the demonstrators, claims which were widely mocked by other outlets. Eventually, it all came crumbling down. In early 2013, the CNA revoked OTV's license once again, this time for good. The network was cited for numerous violations, excessive political advertising outside the legal campaign window, unpaid fines, and blatant propaganda in support of Diaconescu's ambitions. The final broadcast would air on January 22, 2013, ending in the same chaotic, sensationalist style that had defined the channel for over a decade. As for Diaconescu himself, well, in 2014, he was arrested for extortion, where he was later sentenced to over 5 years in prison, and then some. Canal 33 was a Salvadorian television channel that launched on January 20th, 1995, but its origins trace back to Teleprensa, the country's flagship news program, which had aired for decades on Channel 2, part of Telecooperación Salvadorena. But in 1996, the De Leon family, owners of Teleprensa, severed ties with the network and acquired the frequency for Channel 33, and their goal was to establish a new media identity under the name Tenedores, as in forks. By 1998, however, most of the channel's shares were sold to the Technological University of El Salvador. Under the leadership of University Rector José Mauricio Lucel and General Director Narciso Castillo, Canal 33 set out to become the country's most trusted and innovative broadcaster, even hoping to rival the media giant TCS. While it never achieved that goal, Canal 33 did carve out a strong reputation, especially with its youth programming. Its flagship teen show, Buena Onda, became the first in the country to surpass 100,000 Facebook followers and was among the highest rated youth show of all time. And its political debate shows, often featuring personalities like Nacho Castillo, drew loyal viewership. Over time though, warning signs appeared. New programs were heavily promoted, only to vanish weeks later, a clear sign of poor ratings and lack of advertiser support. Rumors of cancellation began making headlines in 2022. At first, many dismissed them as hoaxes, until presenters started publicly thanking viewers for their years of support. It wasn't until March of 2023 that Canal 33 officially shut down, after failing to sell itself despite a $5 million asking price. Looking deeper though, the channel's closure might have stemmed from internal mismanagement. Allegedly, a politically connected young executive took over in 2019 and steered the channel's news coverage into open opposition to the government. According to former staff, this editorial shift led advertisers, many with government contracts, to withdraw, drying up Canal 33's revenue. Others argued the channel simply failed to modernize, relying on outdated formats and losing relevance in a rapidly evolving media landscape. In the end, Canal 33's demise was the result of politics, lost credibility, and a shifting broadcast environment, marking the end of nearly 3 decades on air. Commonly known as TCC, the children's channel holds a nostalgic place in the hearts of kids who grew up in the 80s and 90s across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Before Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network became household names in Europe, the children's channel quietly pioneered pan-European children's television. Launched on September 1st, 1984 via Eutelsat, the children's channel began as a cable-only service, but in 1989 it went free to air on Astra 1A, instantly expanding its reach to households across the continent. Co-owned by Flextech and Warner Amex, TCC was directly inspired by the early model of Nickelodeon. And we're not talking about 90s Nicktoons, we're talking about early 80s pinball Nickelodeon, which makes sense considering the background. Richard Wolff, the driving force behind the children's channel, had previously worked at Warner Amex, the same company that once owned Nickelodeon, and at the same time, they were working closely with the children's channel during its early development. So, in many ways, the DNA of early Nickelodeon was embedded into the children's channel from the very beginning. You could see it in its programming too. They had Danger Mouse, Inspector Gadget, classic cartoons, puppet shows, and quirky game shows. One standout show was Super Mario Challenge, an exclusive game show that only aired on the children's channel. According to UK game shows, it was structured like this. Round 1 was to complete a level in the fastest time, round 2 was to complete the highest score, and round 3 was bonus points for collecting coins and keeping lives. The show aired weeknights from September to December 1991, following the tournament format. Super Mario Bros. In round 1, Super Mario Bros. 2 in round 2, and Super Mario Bros. 3 in the finals. For context, this was Europe in 1991. Super Mario Bros. 3 had just released, and if you didn't own the game, this was one of the few ways to see gameplay footage. TCC's early lead in youth programming gave it a huge advantage, but as the 90s rolled in, competition arrived. To stay relevant, Flextech, who had taken majority control by 1993 and full ownership by 1995, shifted the children's channel's strategy by offering a dedicated teen block called TCC, and was home to American teen sitcoms like Saved by the Bell and California Dreams. The block was seen to be a success and would soon be inspiration for channels like Trouble. The dual identity made TCC stand out from purely child-focused rivals, as it successfully tapped into an underserved teen audience. During the day, the original children's channel branding remained, offering reruns of 80s cartoons and educational content. And in 1995, they introduced Tiny TCC, a preschool block that aired weekday mornings. But that would soon be spun off to another channel known as UK Living TV and was renamed to Tiny Living in 1997. The real turning point though came in 1996 when Flextech attempted to sell a 50% stake in TCC to News Corp. The deal fell through though, and shortly after, News Corp partnered with Sky to launch Fox Kids UK. This new venture took with it the valuable Fox the Bond programming that once had been a staple of TCC, including shows like Power Rangers, X-Men, and Spider-Man. And this is where things began to fall apart. By early 1997, Flextech spun off the teen content into a separate channel, Trouble. Trouble inherited TCC's entire evening lineup, teen dramas, game shows, and American sitcoms, leaving TCC to focus solely on younger children. But the magic was gone. With Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and Fox Kids now dominating the market, TCC felt outdated, and its viewership and relevance declined rapidly. On April 3rd, 1998, the children's channel quietly shut down in the UK, and soon across most of its territories. Our Nordic feed lingered a bit longer, mostly showing reruns until it too ceased operations in 2000.
Sama-sama na silang maghahasing ng saya sa nag-iisang kids channel sa Free TV. Can't wait to see. Sayo ang saya ng Halloween sayay!
Ye was a Philippine free-to-air digital TV channel owned by ABS-CBN, known for airing a wide variety of cartoons and anime shows dubbed in Filipino. While there's limited information about this channel, what's clear is that Ye had a diverse and colorful lineup, from anime and western cartoons, including content from Nickelodeon to live-action series to original local productions. With its accessible, kid-friendly content and free-to-air availability, it quickly carved a niche audience, especially among viewers who didn't have access to cable. But sadly, Ye's run was cut short. In 2020, ABS-CBN's legislative broadcast franchise expired, and the National Telecommunications Commission issued a cease and desist order that forced several of the network's channels off the air, including Ye. And just like that, the beloved channel faded into history. In 1992, a Russian joint stock company called MIBC won a competition for control of the country's 6th television channel frequency, TV6. This was Russia's first private channel and one of its earliest commercial TV stations. Before launch, they signed a deal with TBS in America to supply the new channel with movies and shows, in exchange for representing the interests of Ted Turner in Russian regions. It initially broadcasted for 5 hours a day, expanding to 10 hours by the end of the first year and reaching 500,000 viewers in the Moscow area. But in 1994, the Russians annulled their agreement and TBS opted out as TV6's founder, citing mismanagement and MIBC's lack of capital. Despite those claims, MIBC wasn't exactly strapped for cash. By 1999, its major shareholders included billionaire oil tycoon Boris Berezovsky, who held an 85% stake, and Lukoil Garant, a pension fund tied to the oil giant Lukoil, which owned the other 15%. Berezovsky, an influenced media tycoon and political figure, would have a significant impact on the direction of the station, particularly in later years. But the man who actually founded TV6, journalist Edward Sagalayev, gave a very different explanation on why the Turner partnership fell apart. He was quoted as saying, "Our partners from the provincial city of Atlanta and other American provincial towns came to work in our European capital with a strong feeling that they arrived in some African country where, in exchange for a seashell necklace, they would get the right to the equal co-ownership of a television network that was to air to dozens of millions of viewers." Sagalayev felt that a team of young Russian professionals could do a better job than the American managers at opening a highly lucrative Russian TV market, despite the fact that there were zero professional Russian executives at the time who understood broadcast management. Regardless, the Russian-only approach led to TV6 evolving from being a Moscow channel to being one of the top state television networks. It also helped establish a new generation of Russian showbiz stars like Ivan Demidov, who hosted the popular music program Muzo Balls, a show that focused on pop culture and youth trends. You also had other shows like Cinescope, which was a hit film review and discussion show, and Skandali Nadali, which amped up the drama in a tabloid-style news and gossip show. Although TBS was no longer a part of the Russian channel, it was still able to broadcast a number of foreign series like Babylon 5, Lex, and Married with Children. However, by 2001, Berezovsky began inserting his influence and take greater control of the TV6 channel by featuring more political content including Itogo, a satirical news review, and Tushit Sivet, a political talk show. Boris was a huge critic of Vladimir Putin, and the new style of content didn't sit well with the Russian government, or many of the staff at TV6. As a result, there was a mass exodus of employees, who were replaced by individuals aligned with Berezovsky's views. Entertainment programs were cancelled in favor of investigative reports on corruption and critiques of the Kremlin. The shift alienated viewers and drew accusations of bias against the channel. On January 22, 2002, during a live broadcast, TV6 ceased operations following a ruling by the Russian Supreme Arbitration Court that mandated the station's liquidation. The closure was widely perceived by Western media and press freedom advocates as a Kremlin-orchestrated assault on independent journalism. Critics argued that it was retaliation for the channel's anti-Putin stance, especially after Berezovsky was exiled due to corruption allegations. However, supporters of the decision, including pro-Putin politicians, claimed that it was due solely to financial mismanagement and unprofitability. Subsequently, the channel's frequency was reassigned to a state-backed all-sports network for the 2002 Winter Olympics. Le Cinq was France's first ever private commercial TV channel, launching on February 20th, 1986. The name itself literally means the five, since it was the fifth channel to hit the French airwaves. This was the brainchild of Italian media mogul Silvio Berlusconi, who teamed up with French partners like Jérôme Seydoux, Robert Hersant, and French company Matra. The channel was modeled after Berlusconi's fast-paced Italian networks, loaded with flashy programs, movies, and imported shows, and France ate it up. Viewers got hooked on American hits like Dallas, Dynasty, Columbio, and even lifestyles of the rich and famous. Kids weren't left out either. Lassonk went all in on anime before it was trendy, airing cult classics like Captain Tsubasa, Creamy Miami, Mason Aikoku, and Robotech. But behind the flashy lineup, Lassonk was burning money faster than it was making it. By 1991, the channel had racked up millions of dollars in debt, and even desperate rebrands and cost-cutting couldn't stop the bleeding. The end finally came on April 1992 on April 3rd when the Paris Commercial Court ordered Lassonk's liquidation, and just before midnight on April 12th, the channel signed off for good. Station manager Jean-Claude Lemoine appeared on screen to thank viewers, and then a Golden 5 logo popped up with the chilling message, "Lassonk asks you to excuse this permanent interruption of picture and sound." And just like that, Lassonk became the first French national channel to literally broadcast its own death in front of 7 million people. There's not a lot of info out there on this one, so I'll keep it brief. DTV was a Moldovan television station that operated during the mid-2000s. From what little information is available, it appears to have been an independent news channel that aimed to provide objective reporting at a time when media consolidation and political pressures were tightening their grip on Moldova's press landscape, and unfortunately, that integrity came at a cost. In 2007, DTV journalists were reportedly arrested by law enforcement, and their footage was forcibly erased, an act widely condemned by media watchdogs as an intimidation tactic. Despite its mission to raise awareness and hold those in power accountable, DTV eventually disappeared from the airwaves, yet another casualty of the hostile media environment in Moldova at the time. Not to be confused with the far more successful Rhode Island-based PTV, People's Television was a Thai satellite TV station launched by the former executives of the Thai Rak Thai Party. I couldn't find a detailed list of programming that aired on PTV Thailand, or even confirm how legit this channel really was, because there really wasn't any video footage available out there, but based on its origins and context, I'd assume it probably aired protester coverage and anti-government commentary. The channel didn't last long, as it would shut down in the early days of the 2010 Thailand political protests, under orders of then Prime Minister Abhisit Vejajiva. Herzegovicka Televizija is a television station in Bosnia and Herzegovina that broadcasts in Croatian. Alright, to be honest with you guys, I don't know what else to say about this. I mean, this is their Wikipedia page, so there's really not a lot I can work with. Maybe there is some information out there that's lost in translation, but yeah, that's really all I know about this. Channel 16 was a Bengali language satellite and cable music channel that launched in December 2011 after securing permission to broadcast via satellite downlink. Under the terms of its license, the channel was allowed to air foreign-based programming into Bangladesh, but uplinking from within the country was strictly prohibited. To overcome this challenge, Channel 16 started broadcasting music-focused content from Singapore using foreign satellites, while also maintaining a local office in Dhaka to support its operations. The channel was owned by Insight Telecast and headquartered in Koran Bazar, Dhaka. It became the country's first dedicated music channel until Gan Bangala launched in 2013. However, things began to go downhill pretty fast. Channel 16's test broadcast license expired on November 30th, 2013, and it wasn't renewed. But rather than shutting down, the channel ran illegally by sending a live feed to Israel by fraudulently using Israeli satellites. This is despite the two nations not having diplomatic relations. To avoid detection, they changed their on-screen logo, first to the letter K and then later identifying themselves as MB, or sometimes Movie Bangala. But the game was up by December 2nd, 2014 when Channel 16 was officially shut down after the Bangladesh Telecommunications Regulatory Commission ordered it to stop broadcasting. Overall, this channel seemed really shady. While looking at what I could gather based on reports, it was alleged that the managing director of Channel 16 attempted to enhance the channel's credibility through fraudulent means by falsifying using the name and forging the signature of the Dhaka District Council Administrator. So overall just crazy stuff. Here we have a Bengali-based TV channel, but this one came with some American ties. STV US, which stands for Stanford Television US, was a Bengali language satellite television channel primarily aimed at the Bangladeshi community, especially those living in North America. It was launched on November 22, 2002 and headquartered in Queens, New York, with an additional office in Quran Bazaar, Dhaka, the same location where Channel 16 was also based. The channel was established under the leadership of Hanan Firoz, who was the Vice Chancellor of Stanford University and served as its chairman. Fantanan Firoz, who would later become the chairperson of Stanford University, acted as president, while Naeem Nizam, a prominent figure in Bangladeshi media, served as the managing director and CEO. STV made a bit of a splash early on with programs like Positive Bangladesh, hosted by international fashion icon Bibi Russell. Unfortunately, similar to Channel 16, STV US faced significant legal challenges. In March of 2007, the Bangladeshi government ordered the channel to shut down, citing that it was operating without proper licensing or permission. Nordwestdeutscher Rundfunk, also abbreviated as NWDR, was a public broadcasting organization in West Germany that existed from 1945 to 1955. It was founded shortly after World War II by the British military government to serve the northwest of Germany, including Hamburg, Lower Saxony, Schleswig-Holstein, and North Rhine-Westphalia. NWDR ran both radio and television services and played a central role in rebuilding German broadcasting on democratic principles, replacing the old Reich Rundfunkgesellschaft system of the Nazi era. In its early years, much of NWDR's programming came directly from the BBC in London or from Hamburg, with British control officers supervising content. Over time, both permanent and freelance German staff were granted greater editorial freedom, while the British retained formal pre-censorship authority. NWDR also became a pioneer in post-war German television. It began experimental transmissions in 1950 and launched its first regular service on December 25, 1952, featuring early news bulletins, cultural shows, and political discussions such as Der Internationale Frühschoppen. By the mid-1950s, political and administrative pressures brought an end to NWDR as a single entity, and on February 1, 1955, the British military government repealed Decree 118, setting the stage for a split into two separate broadcasters. You now had Norddeutscher Rundfunk, serving Hamburg, Lower Saxony, and Schleswig-Holstein, and you had Westdeutscher Rundfunk, which served North Rhine-Westphalia. The split will be finalized in 1956, closing the book on Germany's first post-war television station. The impossible love of two cousins who grew up like siblings in the same house. Wait, I think I'm reading the wrong thing. Here we have a controversial Turkish channel known as Samyolu TV. Translated to the Milky Way in Turkish, this channel was closely linked to the Gulen movement, a religious and social organization by Fethullah Gulen. The channel was known for its family-friendly programming, religious themes, and moral storytelling. It often featured dramas and emphasized Islamic values, social justice, and emotional narratives. And while that sounds pretty normal on the surface level, once you know the cultural and political climate in Turkey at the time, it gets much more complicated. Samyolu TV wasn't just another wholesome family channel, it was considered the flagship media arm of the Gulen movement, a religious and social movement that ran schools, charities, and media outlets worldwide. For years, the movement and Turkey's ruling AKP party were political allies, both promoting conservative Islamic values. But by the early 2010s, that alliance collapsed into an open rivalry. As tensions rose, Samyolu's TV content began to be viewed by the government as politically loaded, even if it came wrapped in melodramas and moral tales. Some shows and news segments were accused of subtly criticizing the government or promoting the Gulenist perspective. In April 2016, months after the failed coup attempt, the Turkish government ordered Samyolu TV off the air, citing its ties to the Federalized Terrorist Organization. That's kind of all the information I know about this channel. I did find some comments talking about Samyolu TV and how some people are happy that it's gone, but that's really all I know to it.
Dershanelerin kapatılma kararına İstanbul Pendik Milli Eğitim...
Wow, so this is a bizarre channel. To think that we were talking about channels like G4, PBS Kids Sprout, and now we finally got into this. State-run television. Soviet Central Television, also known as CTUSSR, served as the principal state-controlled television broadcaster of the Soviet Union and regularly promoted the agendas of the Communist Party for over 4 decades. It was, at the time, one of the most watched services in the country. Probably has to do with the fact that there weren't other channels. I mean, this is Soviet Russia we're talking about. The roots of Soviet Central TV can be traced back to the early 1930s. On October 1st, 1934, the USSR began selling consumer television receivers, and within a year, experimental broadcasts commenced in Moscow. By March 1st, 1938, regular transmissions were underway, making the USSR one of the earliest countries to adapt television broadcasting. However, this early momentum was disrupted when Nazi Germany landed a massive invasion in the Soviet Union with Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, causing operations to cease. It wouldn't be until 1948 that broadcasting resumed. The following year, Soviet engineers developed and deployed a 625-line television standard. If you grew up with a CRT TV, that basically means each frame of video was made up of 625 scan lines. And I guess you could say this laid the groundwork for modern television resolutions. After the war, Soviet TV went full speed ahead. In 1951, Moscow's main station was officially renamed Central Television Station, later evolving to Program 1. Think of it as the Channel 1 of the USSR, the big one that everyone saw. By the 1970s, Program 1 had cemented itself as the nation's flagship and was home to several types of programs. Some notable shows included Serve the Soviet Union, which was basically a military prep rally on TV, which featured marching soldiers, patriotic songs, and a reminder that the Red Army's got your back. You also had Come On Girls, a cheerful variety program celebrating Soviet women with music, dance, and other odd segments. I will say from an outsider's perspective, it often appeared more perplexing than empowering. And lastly, you had Club of the Cheerful and Resourceful, a comedy quiz show full of jokes, skits, and games. And believe it or not, the show is actually still on the air. Fast forward to the 1980s, under Gorbachev's reform, censorship loosened a bit and Soviet TV got, interesting, or as the modern day media calls it, woke. Suddenly, viewers were seeing sharper news reports, edgier commentary, and even collaborations with Western broadcasters. One of the more notable international collaborations were the likes of ABC, which co-produced the live television discussion series Capital to Capital, which was sit-down discussions with audiences from both countries during the Cold War. At the same time, private channels were popping up. ATV launched in 1988 as the USSR's first independent TV company, and by 1989, Moscow got its real first commercial television station, 2x2, which played music videos and goofy entertainment. By December 1991, with the Soviet Union officially dissolved, Soviet Central Television shut down for good. On December 27th, control of Program 1 and its sister stations were transferred into the newly formed Ostankino Television Company, which would eventually evolve into Channel 1 Russia. So yeah, Soviet Central went from being one of the earliest TV broadcasters to just another casualty of the Soviet Union. Personally, I think it's just crazy to think that when TV was a new thing, the original purpose was to spread propaganda. It's almost like if that was originally its intent and purpose. For nearly 4 decades, East Germany had its own state-run TV network, Deutsche Fernsehfunk, or German television, translated to English. This was the mouthpiece of the Socialist Unity Party of Germany, broadcasting from Idelshof in East Berlin. DFF began experimental broadcasts in December of 1952, with its first regular programs debuting just after New Year's in 1956. Early on, the channel avoided using GDR in its name, presenting itself as a broadcaster for all Germans. Though, in reality, it had a heavy dose of Marxist propaganda in its programming. Despite its efforts, DFF attracted only a limited audience. During its early years, television remained a rarity in the Eastern Bloc, but that didn't stop the station from competing with West German broadcasters. It tried to lure viewers away with flashy variety shows. Still, many East Germans preferred the forbidden Western TV, despite a state campaign to dismantle Western-facing antennas, a campaign that ultimately failed. However, after the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, censorship ended, news became open, and DFF began airing Western imports and regional programming. By the end of 1991, reunification sealed DDF's fate. The Unification Treaty ordered its closure, and at midnight on New Year's Eve, the channel went dark, where it was handed to regional ARD broadcasters. Yeah, this logo definitely isn't infringing on anything else. Ethiopian News Network, or ENN, was a private television channel in Ethiopia launched in 2016 by Ethiopia-Canadian journalist Bayam Kabidi. It was significant for being the first private television station in Ethiopia to focus on news and politics, breaking the long-standing monopoly held by the Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation. However, things did not go smoothly. The channel faced heavy criticism for misreporting incidents, including the mixing of foreign footage with events occurring in Ethiopia. Most notably, during the Oromo protests, this misrepresentation damaged the network's credibility. Over time, major sponsors such as the Ethiopia Commercial Bank, Ethio Telecom, and the Ethiopian Insurance Corporation withdrew their support. Additionally, ENN encountered government restrictions, often being excluded from press conferences and official briefings, which made it harder for the network to be taken seriously. By June of 2018, after only 2 years on the air, ENN had shut down and had faded into obscurity. On March 24, 1966, Israel officially launched its first locally produced television broadcast, Israeli Educational Television, or IETV. Initially funded entirely by the Rothschild family, the purpose of this initiative was to provide Israel's school children with programs designed to enrich the standard curriculum taught in classrooms. By 1967, it was transferred to the Ministry of Education, where it became an autonomous unit within the ministry. Within just 2 years, IETV's programming was being broadcast nationwide, sharing airtime alongside the former Channel 1. During its early decades, IETV became a household name thanks to popular children's educational shows. These included Chemistry for Beginners, English language learning programs, and most famously, Kishkashta, a witty talking frog cactus who became a beloved national icon after debuting in 1976 on Ma Pitom. Other classics included Parpar Nechmad and the Israeli version of Sesame Street. Starting in the 1980s, the channel began to branch out from pure education into broader territory, producing news programs, entertainment, and even action films. Some of this content targeted adult audiences and occasionally strayed from the channel's original mission, drawing criticism for including material with sexual content, violence, and drug themes. By the 2000s, IETV was broadcasting over 200 weekly hours across multiple outlets, including Channel 2, HOT's Channel 23, and the Yes satellite network. Notably, its news programs were long dominated by secular left-leaning journalists, though later years under Education Minister Gideon Sa'ar brought efforts to balance political representation. In 2012, Eldad Koblenz was appointed the new executive director and pledged to restore the network's educational focus. In December 2013, the channel was rebranded to Hinushet, which means educational in Hebrew. It adjusted its schedule to prioritize children's and educational programming starting at 5 a.m., followed by adult-oriented educational programs from 8 p.m. Episodes were also uploaded to the channel's official YouTube page before airing on television, which was a sign of the changing times. With the rise of internet and smartphones, the need for a dedicated educational television channel was increasingly questioned. As part of a major government broadcasting reform, the Knesset approved a plan in the summer of 2014 to scrap the old Israel Broadcasting Authority and replace it with the Israel Public Broadcasting Corporation, better known as KAN, which officially launched in 2017. As for the original IETV, it continued broadcasting until midnight on August 14, 2018, when the channel signed off for the last time with a farewell message. IETV is leaving you with sadness and love. Thank you to our loyal viewers who found a home with us that was warm, smart, enriching, and full of humor. We gave our hearts and our souls to bring you valuable and quality programming. The very next day, Channel 23 became KAN Educational, retaining many of the same shows but operating under the new broadcasting umbrella.
For details, call your cable operator.
Take it from Mickey. Play Cable's a hit.
Play Cable, the all-game channel.
Play Cable. Sounds sexy, don't it? Known as the All Game Channel, this was a joint venture between Mattel and General Instruments, which allowed local cable operators to beam and television games straight into your home via the cable television signal. By the way, this wasn't technically a TV channel like DirecTV's Game Lounge, it was more like a game plugin, but it did require a TV signal, so I'm letting it slide. The service officially launched in 1981 after testing in 1980 in cities like Moline, Illinois, Jackson, Mississippi, and Boise, Idaho. Subscribers needed the Play Cable adapter, a chunky little adapter you'd plug into the Intellivision cartridge slot and hook into your cable line. Powered it on, and then you get an on-screen menu with up to 20 rotating titles a month, all for just $12, which was a bargain compared to buying a single $25 cartridge. Remember, this was the early 80s, years before Xbox Live or even the Sega Channel existed, so this was some pretty futuristic stuff. However, despite its cutting-edge nature, most households lack the necessary setup for Play Cable to function effectively, and with newer, larger games requiring much more memory and bandwidth, most cable subscribers and operators weren't willing to associate with the cost. Not to mention, the 1983 video game crash ruined the momentum for this service ever making a profit, and so the service was discontinued between 1983 or 1984. Alright, so throughout most of the video, we've gone through several channels that all operated legitimately, but now we've reached the part where we talk about pirate channels. As the name suggests, these are channels that broadcast without a license or legal authorization. Normally, pirate TV channels transmit their own signal, often by hijacking or overriding unused local frequencies with a stronger one. And perhaps the most notorious example has to be the Saudi Arabia-based BOutQ. BOutQ emerged in 2017 following the land, air, and sea blockade imposed on Qatar by Saudi Arabia and 3 allied nations. In the midst of this geopolitical turmoil, a new satellite service called BOutQ appeared. The name itself was a not-so-subtle jab on Qatar's beIN Sports, the region's dominant sports broadcaster, which is also Qatari-owned. However, this was not merely competition, it was outright theft. BOutQ illegally rebroadcasted the entire lineup of beIN Sports, which included prominent events such as the FIFA World Cup, English Premier League, UEFA Championship League, Formula 1, and major tennis tournaments, all without authorization. This operation was conducted through 10 satellite channels utilizing infrastructure provided by Arabsat, a satellite operator owned by the Saudi government. The deception was convincing, and to make their broadcast seem legitimate, they even overlaid its own on-screen graphics on top of beIN's feed, complete with score bugs, logos, and tickers, to make it look fully original. But in reality, it was still the same pirated content. Think of it like watching a meme and then a random steak logo appears at the bottom. The only form of originality I could find from it was from a commercial of a cartoon short portraying a beIN Sports executive as a cigar-smoking businessman, surrounded by piles of cash, as well as an angry crowd. In this clip, he realizes BOutQ is stealing his customers and desperately appeals to FIFA, UEFA, and the Premier League for help, only to be ignored. Returning home, he finds even his own family is watching BOutQ. The short would end with the caption, "No to monopoly, no to politicizing sport." Subtle, right? But it didn't stop at satellite piracy. BOutQ also sold set-top boxes loaded with illegal streaming apps like Showbox, which was basically the Netflix of piracy. These boxes gave users access to thousands of movies, live channels, and international series, all pirated. The signal wasn't hidden either. It aired on public spaces including parks, restaurants, and convenience centers. Yeah, this wasn't some low-key secret club. This was pretty well known in the area. You would think dealing with so much piracy, there would be some intervention from the Saudi government. Well, no. Saudi Arabia would just turn a blind eye to the service. It wasn't until August of 2019 that BOutQ finally shut down. About 10 months later, the World Trade Organization confirmed what many had suspected. BOutQ was backed by the Saudi government and had direct involvement from high-ranking officials, including Saud al-Qahtani, a close aide to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The WTO also found out that Saudi Arabia had failed to prosecute BOutQ and violated multiple international treaties. In response to this theft, beIN Media filed a $1 billion lawsuit for damages. At the same time, Saudi Arabia's ambitions to acquire the English football club Newcastle United deeply became entangled in the scandal. Despite international condemnation, BOutQ remained popular in the region. Many local viewers supported the service, arguing that beIN Sports monopolized sports content and charged excessively high fees. To these viewers, BOutQ represented a rebellious alternative, a pirate's answer to corporate control. Kanal X was a pirate television station that operated in Leipzig, East Germany. It launched on March 17, 1990, just one day before the GDR's free first parliament elections, giving it the distinction of being the only known pirate television broadcaster in East Germany. The idea for the channel was born the day the Berlin Wall fell. Recognizing the need for an independent media platform, video artists Ingu Gunther and Norbert Meisner, along with art historian Jörg Seid, developed the concept for an autonomous television station. Their goal was to provide a voice for citizens' initiatives and opposition groups during the GDR's transition away from Soviet-style communism. Thus, Kanal X was born. According to CanalX.org, which serves as an archive and digital museum for Kanal X, the station only aired 6 times, with each broadcast lasting about 2 hours. Each program featured a mix of political discussions, street interviews, cultural reports, and video art. However, the first broadcast from March 17, 1990 was unfortunately lost due to financial constraints that required the reuse of cassettes, which resulted in the erasure of earlier recordings. Only 2 broadcasts from October and December 1990 have been preserved in their entirety, while the others have been lost. Still, Kanal X remains a fascinating artifact of society in flux, a DIY television experiment during one of the most important transitional moments in German history. Originally called Channel 3, Channel D was Ireland's first known pirate television station. It began broadcasting on April And that's a train. It began broadcasting on April 25, 1981 from the north side of Dublin at the Camelot Hotel on Malahide Road. The signal only reached about 5 miles from its base, but by July the team managed to expand the range to about 15 miles by repurposing an old BBC transmitter, where it was rebranded to Channel D, short for Independent Television Dublin. As for the programming, Channel D was said to have aired uncensored movies, something that didn't sit well with local cinema owners, who feared it might undercut box office sales or sidestep the National Film Censorship Board altogether. Early broadcasts mostly consisted of films. Many of these films were low-budget horror and sci-fi B-movies like Silent Night, Bloody Night, White Comanche, and Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. On Saturdays, they also ran a recurring local interest show filmed on a domestic camera. However, Channel D faced a major setback when its stockpile of videotapes was reportedly destroyed in a freak fire at a Dublin petrol station, resorting to the team reportedly airing the same feature film, number 1 of the Secret Service, over and over again. Despite its ambition and the novelty of pirate TV, Channel D ultimately failed to build the kind of audience that pirate radio had. Due to the channel having a shoestring budget and not so great technology, by late October 1981, Channel D had gone off the air for good. Though short-lived, it did pave the way for other pirate TV experiments in Ireland, but none of them would find lasting success. Channel D just so happens to be one of those channels people still remember.
Don't horse around. Give B&B Mowing a call to get on their schedule while there's still openings. 784-8756 or 356-9420. B&B Mowing.
W10BM was a low-power TV station out of Moorhead, Kentucky, founded in 1988. It broadcasted on Channel 10 at a tiny 18 watts, which is barely enough to cover a small county. Still, the station became a local staple of the community. Its programming lineup was, unique to say the least. It featured a blend of AMG-TV and World Harvest television feeds, alternative media documentaries, and talk radio audio from the Republic Broadcasting Network. But the crown jewel of the station was Buy a Dog, Sell a Hog, an old-fashioned trading post call-in show where locals could sell anything from livestock to lawnmowers, promote yard sales, or simply send birthday wishes to someone. On paper, W10BM looked like small-town television at its purest, but there was a catch. The station wasn't supposed to be on the air. Its broadcasting license had expired in 1998 and was formally cancelled in 2004 after no renewal was filed. The owners, Verl Pennington and Michael Williamson, claimed they kept receiving and paying off their FCC bills, so they assumed that everything was all in the clear. They even argued that they were allowed to operate under wartime emergency rules, stemming from the post-9/11 War on Terror. But the FCC was not impressed. After years of warnings, field visits, and notices, the FCC slapped W10BM with a $144,344 fine in 2017. Yet, despite all this, W10BM kept going, and even stayed on the air. It wasn't until February 23, 2022 that Spectrum finally removed the channel. Since then, there's been no word of a revival, and chances are W10BM is gone for good. As for archives, a YouTube channel called TV10 Moorhead preserves old parades, local events, and other oddities from the station's original run.
Porque no tenemos lugar donde transmitir. Entonces transmitimos acá. Mira, esto es la antena parabólica. Mira, primer mundo.
Before TikTok, Twitch, or YouTube, there was Utopia TV, one of Argentina's boldest experiments in community broadcasting. Born out of a political passion and social need, Utopia wasn't just a pirate station, it was a people-powered megaphone that gave a platform to anyone. The story begins in 1984 with Fabian Moyano, a socialist from Buenos Aires temporarily living in Rio de Janeiro. While living there, he became inspired by Brazil's TV Viva, a mobile project that taught indigenous communities how to film and broadcast their own documentaries in public squares. Moyano didn't just admire it, he brought that rebellious spirit back to Argentina. In 1999, he partnered with Nelson Vasquez and Adrian Moyano to launch Canal 4 Ciudadela, a pirate TV station in Fuerte Apache, a notoriously overcrowded Buenos Aires neighborhood. What started as a weekend broadcast quickly proved its value. When a storm damaged the neighborhood's sewage system, their coverage prompted an immediate response from the local municipality. People realized that this wasn't just television, it was power. The station eventually became a collaborative project. Locals donated tapes, gear, and even their homes to keep the signal alive. Later, the operation was moved to Caballito, a centrally located Buenos Aires neighborhood, to use its signal range to cover the entire federal capital. Since this was a local broadcast, the channel focused on pivoting more regional information rather than content from outside resources. At 6 a.m., the programming began with a community job board offering a range of opportunities from plumbing gigs to childcare. At 7 a.m., a news show featured readings and analysis of newspaper stories combined with the on-ground reporting covering labor strikes, retiree marches, and other local issues. At 8:30 a.m., a 10-year-old host played pirated cartoons and took live calls from kids, with zero filters. Strange, right? From noon onwards, the channel showcased films, music, and performances from rock bands like La Renga, Los Brujos, and Bersuit, along with cultural icons such as Payasola and Cita Rosa. At 9 p.m., the nightly news aired, but this segment was just raw and unpolished. It featured open discussions where callers shared their opinions, rants, and tips, and hosts like Moyano would respond live on air. However, the essence of Utopia was not just the content, but the participation it encouraged. Viewers became hosts, poets became investigation journalists, and kids would become producers. At a time when Argentina only had 5 channels and virtually no cable access, Utopia was revolutionary, but its defiance came at a cost. The station endured 12 government raids over the years, and after the death of Fabian Moyano in 1998, keeping the dream alive became impossible. And so, in 1999, Utopia TV signed off for the last time. It's crazy because if you wanted to be on TV, you had to be a rocket scientist building satellites out of radios, but nowadays you could just put yourself on YouTube. Okay, so we talked about short-lived networks and services before, things like cable music channels, CNN Plus, and the Weathercast, all of which lasted less than a month. But what if I told you there existed a pirate TV station that lasted even shorter? That's where Lucky 7 comes in. And yeah, it's as insane as it sounds. Even Blame It on Jorge covered it, so you know this has some mysterious lore to it. On April 14th, 1978, the first known pirate television station in the United States, Lucky 7, would hit the airwaves. Broadcasting out of Syracuse, New York, this rogue station aired approximately 25 hours of programming over the course of 3 days, from April 14th to April 16th. Basically, a blink and you'll miss it moment. But for those who saw, it left a lingering eerie legacy. Unfortunately, no footage from Lucky 7 survives. No screenshots, no logos, nada. Only newspaper clippings, interviews, and forum posts seem to be the only evidence of its existence, so at least we can paint a picture on what this was. Lucky 7 broadcasted on VHF Channel 7, an unused frequency in the area, and while some of its content was fairly standard, such as old episodes of Star Trek and The Twilight Zone, the channel also aired major Hollywood films that had never been aired on broadcast television at the time, including Rocky and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it wasn't all family fare either. Lucky 7 also aired explicit adult films, including Behind the Green Door and Deep Throat, making it the only time Deep Throat has ever been shown on broadcast TV in the US. So yeah, it was a now or never moment. But what really set Lucky 7 apart was its bizarre presentation. Viewers reported occasional appearances by a man in a gas mask, sometimes said to be wearing a noose around his neck, and he would comment on the programming, announce the station's mission, or even address the viewers directly. In one unsettling moment, he reportedly told the audience, "What you're seeing and what about half of the Syracuse area is seeing, if you're watching, you're a part of that half." Strangely, the channel's production value was surprisingly polished for 1970s standards. It had its own unique logo, a stylized number 7 backed by a choir of female voices singing Lucky 7. For an unauthorized pirate station, it had a level of flair that seemed oddly professional, like this channel. While people in the area were intrigued by what they were witnessing, authorities were alarmed. In an interview with the New York Times, an FCC spokesperson said, "We're interested in finding out who was broadcasting that stuff," adding on to say that the crime was serious, punishable by up to $10,000 in fines, a year in jail, or both. Despite their best efforts, however, the FCC never tracked down the culprit. Over the years, speculation about the identity of Lucky 7's mastermind has continued. The most common theory is that this was the work of Syracuse University communications students, using equipment intended for closed-circuit campus TV and simply boosting the signal to cover a wider area. After all, Syracuse is well known for its radio and TV production programs, so could this have been an elaborate student prank gone too far? I don't know, maybe. Lucky 7 vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind nothing but grainy memories, fuzzy rumors, and a legacy as America's first pirate TV broadcast. Okay, so this is like a bizarre project, but I mean, it shows the extreme lengths people will go to broadcast TV to anyone who had a TV for the time. In 1964, a Dutch company called REM built a man-made platform off of the Dutch coast and served as the base for Radio and TV Noordzee, a pirate broadcasting operation. TV Noordzee was created as a way to introduce commercial television into the Netherlands at a time when commercial advertising on TV was banned. My best guess is that creating artificial land in international waters bypassed Dutch broadcasting laws. But just looking at the original coordinates, it really begs the question, how did they make this? The station would go live with test broadcasts starting on August 12, 1964, and started regular programming on September 1st. Its lineup leaned heavily on American and British entertainment like Mr. Ed, The Saint, Robin Hood, Rin Tin Tin, and more. To get the channel, viewers had to get a special antenna to receive it, but word spread fast, and by October, an estimated 2 million Dutch viewers tuned in nightly. While the channel was pretty popular, the Dutch government wasn't amused. Even though it had no legal grounds just yet, that would all change in December of 1964 when Parliament passed the REM law, declaring the seabed under REM Island to be Dutch territory, effectively putting it in their jurisdiction. Just days later, on December 17th, Dutch Marines boarded REM Island and cut the signal mid-broadcast, bringing TV Noordzee's brief run to an end. But that wasn't the end of commercial television in the Netherlands. Many of the team and backers that worked on the pirate station would regroup to form TROS, a legal broadcaster that carried the same populist spirit into the mainstream. In 2014, TROS would merge with Avro to become Avro-TROS, now one of the country's major public broadcasters. As for REM Island itself, it went on to serve multiple roles, most notably as a government research station, before being relocated to Amsterdam's harbor. Today, it just stands there as a restaurant. Televisão Regional de Luis was a short-lived pirate television station located in the Lisbon metropolitan area of Portugal. It began operations in 1985 as a playful experiment amongst a group of friends, many of whom had backgrounds in electronics. Using a homemade transmitter, they initially broadcasted simple signals between their homes, but over time, they realized a growing number of people were tuning in to their unauthorized broadcasts. At the time, Portugal's television landscape was tightly controlled, only with two state-run channels, RTP1 and RTP2. The lack of variety created a fertile ground for alternative viewing options, and Televisão Regional de Luis, often abbreviated as TRL, quickly gained popularity by word of mouth. By 1986, TRL was operating regularly, airing films, local news reports, weather reports, and cultural programming. They even conducted interviews with celebrities and public figures, elevating their presence in the region of Luis and its surroundings. Broadcasts would typically begin around 8 or 9:30 p.m. and ran into the early morning hours, especially on weekends. The operation was based out of private homes and featured basic setups that included cameras, television, and transmitters. Despite being underground, the station reportedly attracted between 200,000 to 250,000 viewers 3 months after its launch, a remarkable achievement for a pirate broadcaster. The channel generated revenue through local advertising, which helped cover rent and equipment upgrades. However, its growing prominence attracted the attention of inspectors from Portugal's broadcasting authorities. On at least one occasion, a raid was conducted to seize transmission equipment, but one operator managed to escape with the transmitter and amplifier. Despite these efforts, financial challenges and increased scrutiny eventually caught up with the station. A formal complaint about its illegal status led to a court case, but the proceedings were ultimately dropped. TRL ceased broadcasting not long after. Although its run was brief, Televisão Regional de Luis remains a notable example of grassroots broadcasting, media-driven civil disobedience, and the quest for diversity in a heavily regulated television landscape.
Achtung! Fernsehsender Paul Nipkow. Wir begrüßen alle Volksgenossen und Volksgenossinnen in den Fernsehstuben Groß-Berlins mit dem deutschen Gruß Heil.
Closing off this nearly 4-hour journey through defunct TV channels is fittingly the very first television channel in the world. Fernsehsender Paul Nipkow was the world's first regular television station, operating in Berlin, Germany from 1934 until 1944. Yep, TV stations originated in Nazi Germany. Talk about a truth bomb right there. It was named after Paul Gottlieb Nipkow, the German inventor of the Nipkow disc, a pivotal component in early mechanical television systems. The station initially launched as Deutsche Fernseh-Rundfunk, meaning German television broadcasting, and was later renamed to honor Nipkow. Broadcasting from Funkturm, Berlin, it utilized a 180-line mechanical scanning system, offering 90-minute programs 3 times a week. But perhaps the breakthrough moment came with the airing of the 1936 Berlin Summer Olympics, when Olympics ran up to 8 hours a day from Berlin and Hamburg. An estimated 160,000 people watched it, making it the first international sports event shown live on television. Despite the impact and accolades it had, as the war turned against Germany, television operations scaled back. By 1944, with Allied forces advancing and Berlin under heavy bombing, Fernsehsender Paul Nipkow ceased broadcasting, marking the end of the short but historically significant existence of the world's first public television station. For many years, it was believed that much of the remaining footage had been lost. However, after the reunification of Germany in 1990, approximately 280 rolls of 35mm film were rediscovered. These films have since been restored and featured in documentaries, allowing modern audiences to gain insight into this chapter of television history. Well, there you have it guys, that was the final part of the defunct TV channel's Iceberg. Over 4 hours of non-stop TV coverage, and you, the viewer, have made it to the end. Thank you all for watching. And for that, I have a little secret to tell you. I know who controls the media.
That's enough, Luis. You've spoken enough. It's time for you to go.
Wait, who are you guys? Hey, get off me! Hey, what are you doing? Hey!